Jonathan Roumie files $80 million defamation lawsuit against Jameela Jamil. In an instant, the activist turned cultural icon, who had risen from podcast platforms and panel debates to become one of the loudest progressive voices in the Western world, now stood on the edge of a legal abyss she never imagined confronting. She was no stranger to controversy, known for her bold campaigns against toxic beauty culture, misogyny, and wealth inequality, and adored for her unfiltered Instagram monologues. Jameela had built an empire of influence through sharp words and fierce conviction. Her unapologetic tone made her a darling of liberal youth and a constant lightning rod for conservative outrage. But this time, her usual fire had summoned something far more dangerous than a Twitter backlash. Her opponent, Jonathan Roumie, a man not of slogans, but of substance. Roumie, a devout actor and quiet humanitarian with a background in legal advocacy and media ethics, possessed a demeanor rooted in calm discipline. His public image, shaped more by stillness than spectacle, stood in stark contrast to Jameela's volatile digital persona. But beneath that peaceful composure was a man who had spent years studying not just faith, but strategy. The lawsuit filed in federal court was no stunt. It was a carefully orchestrated strike against Jameela's reputation, her finances, and the digital empire she had crafted with her words. The trigger? A seemingly routine Instagram live stream. 3 weeks earlier, Jameela had gone live before an audience of over 200,000 followers. The topic? Environmental accountability. The energy was electric, the comments were flying, the babe was rebellious. Then came the fateful question: why aren't those clean energy bills passing in the Senate? Her response would change everything. With a fiery glare into the camera, she launched into an unscripted tirade, targeting Roumie by name. He's taking dirty oil money. He's blocking progress for profit. He's a fraud hiding behind a cross and a camera lens. He's not a champion. He's a coward selling our planet to billionaires. Call him what he is, Senator Big Oil. The chat erupted with fire emojis and chants of preach, but the applause of her base drowned out the sound of something far more dangerous. Legal boundaries being crossed. She hadn't just criticized him, she had accused him of criminal conduct, without evidence, on a platform with global reach. And Jonathan Roumie had been watching. Dressed in jeans and a simple button-down, his sleeves casually rolled and his shirt untucked, Jonathan Roumie stood at the podium with the calm of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Behind him, a backdrop of oil rig workers, their expressions neutral, their presence deliberate. And with a gentle but resolute tone, he announced it. "I'm not seeking this lawsuit out of anger," he said softly. "I simply want the truth to emerge through proper legal channels." The moment his words hit the airwaves, the media ignited like dry timber. Fox News splashed the headline, "Roumie sues Jamil for defamation, $80 million at stake." While MSNBC offered a subtler take, free speech or slander? Jameela Jamil's accusations face legal fire. Jameela's response came fast and furious. "Republicans, and now Roumie, want to silence anyone who calls out dirty money in politics," she tweeted. "I won't be bullied. I won't be silenced." Her supporters flooded the comments. But beneath the fire emojis, cracks had already begun to form. Within 72 hours of Roumie's public announcement, his legal team filed an airtight 60-page defamation complaint in federal court. The language was surgical. The tone, unforgiving. The lawsuit asserted that Jameela's livestream statements weren't opinion. They were knowingly false accusations issued with malicious intent, aimed at destroying Jonathan Roumie's public and professional life. And then came the bombshell, a leaked email from Jameela's own staff. It would become the heart of Roumie's legal offensive, a dagger forged not by his team, but by hers. In the message, Jameela had written to a media advisor, "Roumie obstructs progress at every turn. We need to discredit him before he causes more damage." But it was the next line that detonated everything. "Find any information, true or not, that shows he's betraying the people." Those 4 words, true or not, became the spine of Roumie's legal argument. Proof, his lawyers claimed, not only of malice, but intent. As the lawsuit's details became public, the reaction was instant and seismic. Conservative outlets pounced. Jameela exposed. Truth doesn't matter to the left. Even typically sympathetic media paused, hesitant. CNN's legal analyst had warned viewers, if the email is authentic, this isn't just careless rhetoric. It's a potential career-ending legal mistake. Inside Jameela's campaign office, the mood had shifted from combative to panic-stricken. The walls, once covered in protest posters and empowerment slogans, felt like they were closing in. She summoned her inner circle. The meeting turned volcanic. Some aides begged her to apologize, settle, survive. Others warned, "You're a symbol. If you fold, they'll say we all lied." But Jameela was resolute. They edited that email, twisted it. "I won't apologize for standing up to the machine." She fired back on Twitter with a defiant thread, painting herself as the latest target of conservative intimidation. The post went viral, but the backlash came just as fast. Legal experts, even liberal ones, cautioned she was making it worse. "She's building their case for them," said one former federal prosecutor on MSNBC. "This isn't a culture war anymore. This is court." "She's building the case against herself," muttered a former federal prosecutor live on MSNBC. Every tweet, every thread, it's more rope for Roumie's team to tighten. And tighten they did. As Jonathan Roumie made quiet appearances at community centers, churches, and civic events across Louisiana, he kept his tone carefully restrained. He never mocked her, he never gloated. Instead, he repeated the same line with soft but steady conviction. "I hold no personal animosity toward Miss Jamil, but when someone uses their platform to spread deliberate falsehoods that harm another person's name, accountability is not vengeance, it's justice." The public took notice. While Jameela fought a war online, Roumie was winning hearts offline. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, her world darkened. Inside her campaign office, where once hopeful volunteers had gathered beneath vibrant posters reading, "Speak loud or be silent forever," the energy had shifted. Now those posters stared back at her like echoes from a more certain past. Her team was fractured, her advisors were tired, and her influence? Slipping. It wasn't the attacks from conservatives that wounded her the most. It was the silence of her own. She had expected fierce, unified defense from her progressive allies, the same who had rallied behind her in previous storms. But this time they were watching from a distance, cold, calculated. At a closed-door meeting of the Financial Oversight Committee, where she had once commanded attention, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke with surgical indifference. "Let us focus on advancing our legislative priorities." A message less about the future and more about leaving her behind. Chuck Schumer offered even less. "It will be handled through the appropriate legal channels." No one said her name. Even her ideological family began pulling away. Bernie Sanders, the man she once called her mentor, released a sterile statement. Political discourse must be rooted in facts and mutual respect. Ilhan Omar posted a vague tweet about unity. Rashida Tlaib avoided every question about the lawsuit. Each absence landed like a blow, quieter than betrayal, but heavier than hate. And outside her office, the digital empire she once ruled had begun to splinter. Her army of online defenders, activists, influencers, creators, were no longer marching in unison. Some stayed loyal, calling the lawsuit a political ambush. But others, especially the rising generation of TikTok progressives, weren't so forgiving. A viral video racked up 2 million views in 36 hours. A young woman in a hoodie, arms folded, stared into the camera. "We believed in her. She represented all of us." But what was that email? Why give them this ammo? Why put the movement in danger over a careless sentence? Comments poured in. "She needs to apologize. Her ego did this. We needed a leader, not a performer." Jameela tried one last move. Familiar ground, another live stream. Framed by shelves of feminist theory and social justice manifestos, wearing her now iconic Tax the Rich t-shirt, she looked into the lens with the old fire. This isn't about truth, it's about fear. It's about silencing voices that challenge power. "And I won't bow, not to Jonathan Roumie, not to anyone." But something was missing. The comment section, name, once ablaze with passion, was filled with the hesitations. "Can you show proof? Why not just clarify and move forward? Is this really helping?" The fire was flickering, and for the first time in her ascent, Jameela Jamil faced a truth more terrifying than the lawsuit itself. Her greatest weapon, her voice, no longer echoed like it used to. "This lawsuit isn't about law, it's about silencing dissent. I will not be intimidated." That was Jameela Jamil's final stand on livestream. Her voice fierce, her face unwavering beneath the glow of her bookshelf filled with social justice manifestos. But the reaction was no longer fire and fists. The tide had shifted. "Do you have any evidence? Why not just apologize? You're hurting the cause." These weren't trolls, these were followers, believers. Now, skeptics. The fortress of support she'd built over years of speaking out had begun to crumble, not from external attack but from fractures within. And then came the real collapse. Her team turned on her. A senior communications aide leaked to Politico that multiple staffers had warned her, explicitly, not to make the accusations against Jonathan Roumie. She believed her social media reach was stronger than legal consequence. Those words hit harder than any Fox News headline, because this time it wasn't the right attacking her. It was the people who once shielded her. Her credibility wasn't just under attack, it was bleeding out. While Jameela spiraled, Jonathan Roumie stayed silent, but not still. His legal team, methodical and unflinching, pressed forward. The breakthrough came in a stark, black and white ruling. A federal judge denied Jameela's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. The judge's 12-page opinion was devastating. The leaked email, the true or not line, the coordinated messaging, it all constituted preliminary evidence of actual malice, enough to warrant trial. Within minutes, the headlines roared. Court deals crushing blow to Jameela Jamil. Roumie marches toward victory, integrity versus influence. The defamation trial that could reshape political speech. Fox News cheered. MSNBC treaded carefully. Even the New York Times ran a muted headline questioning the sustainability of activist celebrity culture in the legal age. The National Review declared, Roumie is playing chess. Jamil, still stuck on Instagram checkers. Her collapse was inevitable the moment she hit go live. As Roumie received standing ovations at conservative conferences and gave interviews highlighting the dignity of truth, Jameela faced a nightmare of noise. Twitter mentions, late-night editorials, staff resignations, legal bills multiplying like shadows. A now viral TikTok video stitched her live stream with courtroom sound effects and sirens. Captioned, "When the truth doesn't matter" line makes it to federal court. It racked up 4 million views in under 48 hours. She tried to fight it, but the hashtags once used to defend her name now questioned it. And every time she opened her phone, the screen offered no comfort, only reflections of herself she no longer recognized. The brave voice, the symbol of resistance, the movement's future. Now reduced to a cautionary tale echoing through courtroom blogs and viral commentary. What happens when the internet meets the law and loses? It wasn't the courtroom that broke her. It was a TikTok. 20 million views, one edited clip, her infamous live stream overlaid with explosion sound effects and a mocking caption. When your superhero delusions self-destruct. It hit harder than any legal brief. And as she lay awake in her modest Washington rental, the once glamorous apartment sold to cover legal costs, Jameela Jamil scrolled endlessly, seeking even a flicker of support among the flood of humiliation. She found instead a comment. She was our future. Now she's just another voice that couldn't tell the difference between rage and responsibility. Anonymous, but unforgettable. Her pride shattered not from enemies, but from disillusioned believers. Outside her window, Washington slept. Inside her soul, something was breaking. Her mother, Blanca, now lived under self-imposed house arrest in the Bronx, curtains drawn tight. Paparazzi had turned their building into a perimeter of lenses. Security detail costs mounted as fast as her legal bills. Over $1.5 million, drained in weeks, and still rising. A financial advisor warned, if the court awards even 10% of what Roumie is asking, you'll lose everything. And yet, she still refused to apologize. Not because she didn't consider it. She did, late at night, alone. Dozens of drafts, never posted. But pride and ideology, the twin pillars of her career, refused to collapse, even as the rest of her world did. The final straw came not from a gavel, but from within the halls of Congress. Under growing pressure from Democratic leadership and desperate to shift the media spotlight, Jameela announced her resignation from her leadership post on the House Financial Services Committee. Her Instagram post was short and bittersweet. I need to focus on my constituents and the important challenges ahead. This is not surrender, it's realignment. But everyone knew the truth. The movement had lost its brightest flame. While Jameela stepped away in defeat, Jonathan Roumie stepped into the national spotlight with quiet dignity. He never gloated, never celebrated, only stated again and again, accountability is not an attack, it's a responsibility. To truth, to decency, to civil discourse. He became a fixture at conservative events, not as a politician, but as a symbol. The man who won not with anger, but with strategy, not by shouting louder, but by waiting longer. The Wall Street Journal declared, Roumie transformed a lawsuit into a moral campaign, and proved you don't need to cancel someone to defeat them. The fallout reshaped everything. Political strategists across Washington began training candidates not just in public speaking, but in social media risk mitigation. Consulting firms offering digital liability audits saw business surge. One Democratic senator off the record admitted, "We all post differently now. Nobody wants to be the next Jameela." Meanwhile, her story became a case study in media ethics courses, law schools, and activist circles worldwide, where once they said, "Speak truth to power," they now whispered, "Speak carefully, the internet remembers, and the courts don't forget." Final frame, Jameela Jamil, once the voice of a generation, now stood in shadow, her platform still intact, but her aura dimmed, her cause shaken. Jonathan Roumie, quiet and composed, had emerged not just as a winner, but as a new model of influence, one that whispered while others screamed and still prevailed. The final gavel hadn't even fallen when the editorials began pouring in. One from the New Yorker struck a chord nationwide. When elected figures sue each other over political speech, we risk shrinking the vital space where democracy breathes. Jonathan Roumie had won, but the price? Still under debate. While many celebrated his courtroom victory as a triumph of truth over chaos, others, across party lines, wondered aloud, had political disagreement just crossed an irreversible line? Had democracy traded open discourse for litigation? In the weeks that followed, the ripple effect was undeniable. Young congressional staffers, once eager to clap back on social media, now reviewed every post through a legal lens. Check with counsel first became a new norm. A DC-based consulting firm reported a 30% spike in revenue from social media risk assessments alone. Even a Democratic senator, off record to Politico, confessed, "No one wants to be the next Jameela. One tweet and it's over." International reverberations. The case didn't just shift Washington, it shifted perception around the world. In London, a Guardian columnist warned, "When policy debates become courtroom duels, democracy doesn't just suffer, it bleeds." In Berlin, a think tank called it a milestone in political communication liability. And in Sao Paulo, a former Jameela supporter, a grassroots activist, summed it up with haunting clarity. "She inspired us to speak. Now she teaches us to think before we do." A final lesson. The $80 million lawsuit was never just about money. It was about language as power, about how a sentence spoken in conviction can become evidence, how influence without responsibility is a weapon pointed inward. Jameela Jamil's fall wasn't scripted by her enemies. It was written in her own voice. One line, 4 words, true or not. And Jonathan Roumie, he never shouted, never trended. He simply moved, one piece at a time, across a board most never realized they were playing on. Closing narration, YouTube style. This case changed the rules. It chilled political speech, redrew the limits of digital boldness, and reminded us all, words echo, evidence matters. And in the age of influence, truth isn't optional, it's everything. So the next time a public figure hits go live, they might remember this one name, Roumie. Because when you speak with millions watching, you're not just performing, you're testifying. And as this high-stakes political showdown comes to a close, one truth remains crystal clear. Words have power, and accountability knows no ideology. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you rethink how influence works in today's world, don't stop here. There's more coming. Subscribe to the channel for more real-world confrontations, behind-the-scenes drama, and untold narratives that shape the world we live in. Your support helps keep these powerful stories alive. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay bold, and stay with us.